Look, there's a reality here about our society. Generally speaking, our society does not tell us what they really think. And common decency of letting someone into your home, being polite, and then shutting the door. And sometimes the lead says, oh, I'm so glad that's over with, right? That happens. I hate to break your hearts, but sometimes you leave their home and they're glad you left. And it has nothing to do with you. It's the fact that you're a stranger, you're selling something, and they were stressed out about it. Your job is to get through that, right? To unpack what's really going on by asking really good questions and sometimes challenging their thinking. So when you ask how or what, how are you going to decide when the market's ready? And they're like, yeah, home prices go up. And you hear the fact that they don't really have certainty around their answer. But that's a moment where you get to actually call it out. John, can I be honest with you? With all due respect, it doesn't sound like you really have a grasp on what the market needs to be like for you to sell. Is that fair? Am I missing it? And that's the moment that the mask comes off. I do want to talk about your pipelines a little bit. I want to talk about, your first quarter of 2025. Because if you're going to sell a lot in February and in March, it's going to be what you've done over the last 45 days and what you're doing right now. So I want to be really strategic about that. But my name is Barry Jenkins, and I run a teamerage in Virginia Beach of 80 agents. And I wrote a best-selling book called Too Nice for Sales. And the team at Mescula has asked me to meet with you guys every week and do a small coaching session. So if this is your first time, I do see a few new names. This is your opportunity we are in a group setting, but what you're going to find really quickly is I try to do a lot of one-to-one coaching in the group setting so we all learn together. So sharing your wins, anything that's been a success over the last week or two, sharing your failures over the last week or two. And so there's no wrong answer here. It's really just about you being either affirmed for your wins or getting guidance for your failures. So I could give examples of what wins and failures look like, but if anything's come to anyone's mind, go ahead and unmute your mic and if you want to kick us off. So who's had a win or a struggle over the last few weeks that they'd like to discuss? So examples of things that you might be struggling with. You can't get leads to answer the phone. Maybe you've been buying leads from the system for a while. You're not converting any, so we can unpack that some. You've met with people, but you can't get them quite to list yet. So we can go over those scenarios a little bit. So I know all you guys have more business. You can see somebody unmuted. I heard somebody. No?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Last video. Yeah, I would like to go over that scenario. I've met with people and the meetings have gone really well. I don't think I've had one that has gone badly, which is kind of cool. But with that being said, I'm only looking at like maybe 1 out of 6 that's listing, ready to list. And just kind of wondering what the best way to carry on the conversation is to see where they're at with their process and without, being a nuisance. I'm sure we touched on it before, but a refresher would be great.
No, absolutely. Part of this, Amber, love the sweater, by the way, big office fan. So love the Dunder Mifflin sweater. So I think that for some agents, the initial hurdle is calling the lead and getting them on the phone and setting that appointment. And so it's like, we did it, right? And then we go to the appointment and now the optic is kind of, I want them to enjoy their time with me. I don't want them to be glad that I'm leaving. I want them to like me, but I also want to add value. And so it's like this mixture of value add support, and then, rapport building, right? Oh, you went to the same school as my children, or, whatever. And I think in the rapport building, when we're face to face with the people, we start to surface what their objections are. And a lot of times, guys, the agent that struggles with being too nice, when we hear the objection, our instincts kick in and we affirm their reasoning. And I actually tell you to do that. So you gotta pay attention to what I'm saying, because on the one hand, I tell you to affirm their objections. And I literally just said to you, sometimes people that are too nice affirm their objections. So on its face, that's a contradiction. But what you have to understand is affirming their objections is about making them feel heard. So when they say they're waiting a year because they're concerned about the market, You affirm them so they feel as though they're being heard, that they're feeling understood. I'm so glad that you're taking the process seriously. And not many people pay attention to the market the way you do. And I think that's a really good decision. So now I've affirmed them. But as you're affirming their objections, you can't necessarily buy into their objections hook, line, and sinker. Meaning, when you see their name 3 or 4 weeks later and you think about reaching out to them, and you say to yourself, well, he was waiting for the market to change, or he's waiting for insert objection, I'm not going to call him. At that moment, what's happened is you haven't just affirmed their objection, you have their objection has become your reality, to the point that you're not necessarily moving them along. So, and I'm not saying, Amber, you've done any of this, I'm generalizing, but we tend to hear their objections and we kind of wait for them to resolve the objection on their own. So we wait for them to decide that the market is favorable enough to make a decision. And whether it takes 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, we have no idea. And common teaching is we'll just stay in front of them, right? I'm not that patient. I'm really not, especially if you're spending money every month on marketing. Looks like we've got okay. If you're spending money every month on marketing, it's hard to go 6 months and not get a sale. So all that to say, when you hear their reason that they don't feel they're ready, generally speaking, I want you to ask them a question like, oh, tell me more about that. Or that's interesting. How did you come to that decision? So let's use the market as an example. I'm waiting for the market to become more favorable. I'm glad you're paying attention to the market. It shows you're a savvy consumer. How did you decide that the market isn't good? And then they're going to give their reasons, right? And then I want you to ask more questions, more how and more what questions. I want your disposition to be a really curious teacher or counselor, where the words that are coming out of their mouth, you're not like, oh, that's an objection. Okay, they're not ready. Let me go find another lead. It's, okay, that's an objection. If the objection was this candle and they hand it to me, I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to examine the candle, right? I'm going to feel the bumps on the glass. I'm going to open it. I'm going to smell it. I'm not telling you to smell your clients. So, you got to pay attention. This is an analogy. Okay. But you flip it around and you really analyze it, right? And as you're doing that, you are learning more about what they're motivated by. What's going to happen, the person that says they're waiting for the market to be more favorable, they haven't actually told you what's motivating them yet. They've told you why they don't want to move forward. But what you're going to hear from most people, if they use the market as the reason that they're waiting, they're like, their reasons normally aren't great. They're like, oh, well, I'm waiting because I won't have a home to buy, right? So then I would say, got it. Well, yeah, you need a home to buy. How do you know that there's no homes to buy? At some point, when you keep asking how and what, when you're in front of them, you're going to surface a point where they don't have an answer, right? And that's the moment when they don't have an answer. That's your nurture touch point. So basically, the point of ignorance or misinformation. So ignorance, confusion, misinformation, or fear. When you're talking to them, whatever they're afraid of, confused by, misinformed of, that's what your nurture point's going to be. So instead of you calling them every month and saying, hey, just seeing if your situation's changed, your follow-up now is like a laser or a surgeon scalpel. It's not a shotgun or a wide net. Sending out monthly marketing reports, which are great to do. I'm not telling you not to do that. But when you have somebody that's given you a very specific reason that they're not ready to sell, you need to do more discovery around that. And then once you surface what's really going on, and also this is tricky because generally speaking, our society is not in the moment. They're not generally speaking, people are not self-aware. You know this because when you meet somebody that's self-aware, it's kind of refreshing, Like, wow, they're in touch with what's going on in their life. They're very aware of their feelings. They like it's refreshing when you so most people they're telling you what they believe to be true and they haven't figured it out for themselves. So that's why these questions of the how and these what questions are so powerful with your lead nurture. So assuming these five or six people that Amber mentioned she's met with, and they aren't quite ready to list, she probably, if we had a spreadsheet and I said put their names on one column and their reason for not being ready in the next one, she probably could list in all of them. Now, what you have to do for all of those people that had a legitimate reason that they weren't ready, I think two things need to happen. One, I think a follow-up discussion with them that's relevant to their specific needs is really important. Now, this is really tricky. And honestly, it's the most difficult part. I'm going to stay with the marketing or the waiting for the market to change. And if you have specific questions, Amber, about the other objections, we can do that. But using the analogy of the market, I might look for some kind of information about the market that's changed. And that's the impetus of my call. Hey, Amber, this is Barry. Really enjoyed meeting with you a couple months ago. I know you were waiting for the market to turn around. And I just read a report that interest rates are supposed to change in the first quarter of this year. Have you happened to see that information? No, I haven't. Would you like me to send it? Yeah, sure. Email or text. Text works great. Perfect. And then here's the phrase. So after I've given them a reason, something valuable, something interesting to talk to them about, I'm going to use the phrase, while I have you. What that does is it transitions from my original reason of calling them, which was value to them. Now I'm going to move to talking about what I need to talk about, which is, for most of us, we need to do a little bit more discovery. So I would say something like, hey, while I've got you, how are you going to know when the market has changed enough for you to be ready to sell? Now, that's not the question you have to go with, but you get what I'm doing here. I'm not calling them and saying, hey, yeah, we spoke 2 months ago. I had a couple more questions I wanted to ask you, right? You could do that, but it's not subtle. It's not engaging, right? You kind of want this to feel organic. And you do some more discovery. Now, as you do that more discovery, that's when you can go into tailoring and helping them. So, for example, whatever their reasons are for waiting, you're going to try to think through what content can I provide them? What information can I send to them that can help them to see that the market is in a favorable place? Now, if it's not, that's a different discussion altogether. But if there are things that they are not thinking of, this is your time to give that to them. So, for example, maybe their issue is not finding a home. I'm waiting for the market to change because there's not enough homes on the market. Well, John, now that I've clarified that with you, you're going to sell your home for more because there's not a lot of homes on the market. Now the question is, what are you going to do when you're looking? So let's talk about a possession agreement. You could sell your house and possibly rent it back from the owner. So you have your cake and eat it too. You sell at the top of the market, you stay in your home, and you start searching for another. Has anyone talked to you about that? No one's talked to me about that. Okay, another one. Have you ever considered renting in an Airbnb? Because you can sell at the top of the market, take advantage. You guys would be surprised at the percentage of people that would be willing to go into a transitionary period to capitalize on a high resale value. You're not going to be able to go into those granular details with a homeowner unless you crystallize their motivation. Unless you really dig into what's going on, you can't give them, it's kind of like Life Hacks Real Estate Edition. That's what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to make this process easy for them by sharing really cool secrets or quote life hacks for real estate in the sales process. Now, everyone you talk to is not going to be like, oh my gosh, Amber, I've never heard of that. Can we go put a sign in the yard next week? Right? So let me set your expectations appropriately. This is not about convincing them to sell next week. But what you are going to find is if you consistently approach your nurture clients, this works for buyers too, by the way, your nurture clients with very specific ideas and resources to meet their long-term goals, you are actively shrinking the nurture time. For most of our sellers, they tell us they're looking 9 to 12 months away. When we do discovery, they typically don't have a really good reason. Sometimes they do, but typically they don't. What we find is that by making it easy for them to access financing, to look at houses, to get contractors in the home, whatever the issue is, the easier and more resourceful we are for them, the easier we make it for them and the more resourceful we are for them, the faster that nurture process starts to happen. And you'll know you got them. If you follow the playbook that I just gave specifically, first of all, it will absolutely shrink the nurture time. This will and does work for my sales team. And you'll know that you got them. Like when you're fishing, you caught the fish because it's pulling on the line. You'll know that you have them on the hook when they start calling you, ideating on what you shared. Hey, you mentioned about seller possession agreement. Let me ask you a question about that, right? Those are called buying, signs, right? They're actually starting to go there in their mind. A lot of people think that this is a lot more complicated, and it is a complicated process moving from one home to another. But a lot of people think that it's something that's much more difficult, and it is if you don't know these real estate hacks. So let me pause for a moment and just I know that was a lot of information for everybody. Does anyone have any questions about what I've just shared? Amber, appreciate you bringing up a scenario. Do you have any, as you're trying to apply it to your clients, do you have any questions about this?
No, not really. I think that's super valuable. When I think more about their individual situations, I could get some more clarity on their motivation so I could offer more specific values. So I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
keep that in mind and practice it with what's generally valuable for now. It's like market
right.
updates.
And don't go into this thinking, okay, the sales guy Barry just taught me a new sales technique. I really want you to be passionate about helping. I do this sometimes in this session. Think about how I am with you right now. Think about how excited I am to teach you something that is going to unlock a new level in your business, right? I could totally, I could have, right? I could have my camera off and I could be, does anyone have any questions? No? All right. Well, we'll wait until someone does, right? That could be what I'm doing, but I'm passionate about helping you. I want you to take that energy that you're experiencing with me into each individual client. What will accidentally happen is you will become a fantastic objection handler. And you'll walk out of the appointment, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I totally overcame every objection they had. And I didn't even try. This is the sweet spot for the nice person. When the nice person realizes that they've been holding back for fear of being pushy, when we unlock this reality, that does not have to be the mindset. We don't have to live in fear of being pushy. What if we lived in fear of not being helpful enough? I don't know about you, but that's a decision. You could decide, I don't want to be pushy. I'm afraid of being pushy. I'm afraid of scaring them away. Or I'm afraid that I'm going to walk out of this house and not give them my absolute best so that I can make what could be a year-long frustrating journey a 90-day adventure of increasing their cash in their pocket, finding their dream home, and telling this story for years to come of how grateful they were that they sat and they met with me. So this is a mindset. And the nice agent is typically more motivated by not bothering people than they are helping people. When I figured this out, it was lights out, game over for me. Game over. Because then I started to tell people what I really thought about what they were saying because I had a heart to serve them, not because I was trying to make a sale. And you see this in lots of other industries. You see the boxer that is ready for the fight and they're calm, right? And then you see the boxer that's not ready for the fight and they're compensating and they're yelling and they're trying to make a show. And the boxer that's dialed in gets the job done, right? There's a mindset here that is, so I don't have any hardcore closers in my 80 agent sales team. My organization is made up of people that I'm convinced that if they were at another organization that is your typical, buy or die, hardcore closer atmosphere, they would be one of the weakest salespeople in the organization. because my organization is made up of people like me, really kind, giving, supportive, servant-minded individuals. And because I've taught them obsessively what I'm teaching you guys right now, they come across as a really confident, at times aggressive, but it's coming from a place of passion. I remember one time I was talking to a lead, and I told him, I said, like, that's a really dumb plan. Now, I shouldn't have used the word dumb, to be honest with you. So don't copy that. I was just so in the moment, and I was so like worried that what he was doing was wrong, that I used strong language for a stranger, right? And fortunately for me, he laughed, and I was able to explain to him why. All right. So Stephanie said she has the same challenge. The conversations and the meetings go great, but then they lose touch. Look, there's a reality here about our society. Generally speaking, our society does not tell us what they really think. And common decency of letting someone into your home, being polite, and then shutting the door. And sometimes the lead says, I'm so glad that's over with, right? That happens. I hate to break your hearts, but sometimes you leave their home and they're glad you left, and it has nothing to do with you. It's the fact that you're a stranger, you're selling something, and they were stressed out about it. Your job is to get through that, right? To unpack what's really going on by asking really good questions and sometimes challenging their thinking. So when you ask how or what, how did you decide on, how are you going to decide when the market's ready? And they're like, yeah, home prices go up. And you hear the fact that they don't really have certainty around their answer, right? That's a moment where you get to actually call it out. John, can I be honest with you? With all due respect, it doesn't sound like you really have a grasp on what the market needs to be like for you to sell. Is that fair? Am I missing it? And that's the moment that the mask comes off. You know what, Barry, you're right. I'm still trying to figure that out. Fair enough. That helps me to be able to help you. How about this? How about I supply you with some information over the next 30 days to help educate you and empower you to make a good decision? But you guys have got to get past the veneer. Veneers are like, it's like a fake tooth that's put on the top. That's what a lot of these conversations are. But asking those how and what and digging in, you start to figure out what's really going on. All right. So then Dennis said, if they do not respond at all, how long do you keep trying before it turns into harassing them? So yeah, we found that 7 or more outreaches increase the opportunity to have a conversation by about 35%. We also found that unless trained to call and text over 7 times, most agents call between 1 and 2 times. I'm not even going to ask you guys to do a show of hands if you call between 1 and 2 times per lead. But if you do, you're in good company. That tends to be the norm. The other thing that I want you guys to be doing, Dennis, when you are doing these outreaches, I need you to be like the magazine covers. When you're at a grocery store and you go to look at the aisle, there's a lot of times like a teaser subject, 3 ways to make your job love you, right? And you have to open the magazine to see the 3 ways, right? It's the same thing with those annoying social media links, like these pages where it's got like a really spicy news, like somebody famous, and they're like, you won't believe what John did to Mary. And it has a picture of them and you have to click it. And then you got to scroll through all those ads to get to the actual content, right? That's how your messages, your voicemails and your texts need to be. John, saw that you needed your home value. I have 2 things to discuss with you. Let me know when you have a second. They don't answer. Then the next text could be, let me know, right? That could be your nurture text. A solid let me know text works really well, by the way. And then they still don't answer. So 2 days later, you call, hey, John, I tried you via text a couple times. I did have some information about your home, but I had a question about it. Let me know when you have 5 minutes to chat. So it's very specific. It's never checking on you to see if you're ready, seeing how it's going, touching base. Remove all that verbiage from your language. I would never call you back if you called me and left me a message and said, hey, I'm touching base. I would never do it. It's not valuable. I do not want to be checked on. You're not my doctor. Okay. Like, I don't want to be checked on. But if you call me and say, I have something for you, if you text me and say, I have something for you, and I don't tell you what it is, don't tell them, I want to talk to you about the real estate market and the renovations that your home needs. Don't say all that. Keep it short. I had two things I wanted to discuss with you. What you'll find it, first of all, if you call and text more than 7 times and you dangle the value add in the content, in the text message, in the call, in the email, you will get more engagement. Not everybody will call and text you back, but you will get return calls. You will get return texts. Because remember, they contacted you first. This is not just a database of homeowners that you're cold calling. These are people that went through a funnel to get in front of you. So there is interest there. They just don't value talking to you. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being honest. They don't value talking to you, and that's why they're not answering the phone. But if you give them a reason to talk, and they don't have to think of a question. That's the problem with touching base and seeing how it's going. I'm burdening the consumer with knowing enough about the subject to articulate a question to me. But if I can say to them, I had 2 things I wanted to talk to you about, I'm giving them a gift of being able to call me back and say, what did you want to talk about? They don't have to articulate a question. They don't have to know enough about the subject matter to call me back. And so it gives them a little bit more of a safe space to return the call. And then, all right. So I will be flooding. So Maya says, I'll be flooding up with info on the decluttering and market stats. Is there something else that you suggest to get the appointment? Yes. Those that have been on the call know that this is still working for my team. So until it stops working, this is going to be how we get in our homes. Nobody hardly ever feels like they're ready to meet with the agent. Okay. They get their home value. They very rarely say to you, yes, I'd love to meet and talk about my home. So what we do is when they tell us they aren't ready, we celebrate and affirm the fact that they aren't ready. So it sounds something like this. They say to us, they're waiting a year. John, I'm so glad to hear you're not ready and you're taking this process seriously. I just would rather work with somebody that's way far out because it shows me you're taking the process seriously. Okay, box checked. I affirmed them. Then what I'm going to do is, and I'll go over the phrase in a moment, but let me teach you what I'm about to do. I'm about to create an opportunity for them that can only happen before they're ready. So before they're ready, they're starting to think about what they need to do to fix the home. And they're going to start repairing probably things that aren't going to get a return on investment. So if I meet with them when they're ready to sell, they've already spent all the money. They've already fixed the stuff, upgraded the things, repainted things, right? And so it won't matter when they're ready. But if I can meet with them before they make the decision to make changes to their home, I'm going to save them a lot of time and money fixing things that wouldn't get a return on investment. So it sounds something like this. I'm so glad you're not ready. I'm excited about the fact that you're taking this process seriously. And it also creates a fantastic opportunity. You probably have some things in your mind that you need to fix. And what I do for my clients is I do a quick 15 to 20 minute walkthrough of your home. And I look at your house like a buyer would. And my goal in walking your home is preventing you from fixing things that a buyer is not going to care about. And so you're effectively wasting time and money. I can't do this walkthrough when you're ready to sell, though. It has to be before you're ready. And this is our close. I like to do these Wednesday afternoons or Saturday mornings, but I can be flexible on another day. What works best for you? The online internet websites can't do this, right? Online agents, phone calls can't do this. This is only something physically that I would need to do by walking the home. So you're literally creating a reason and a unique selling proposition early on in the process to meet face to face. This absolutely crushes. You will absolutely get appointments by doing this. And once you meet with them after you're done, bring a CMA and bring a listing presentation, because it's very easy at that moment to say, hey, while I'm here, now that I've seen the home, would you like me to go over the CMA again? I might have a couple of tweaks here and there. Then you do that and you say, well, while I'm here, I know you're not ready to sell, but would you like to learn a little bit more about the selling process? and you just kind of backdoor into a listing presentation. Anybody that we've gone through that process and their home is selling for a little bit more than they thought, they have to fix a little bit less than they thought. So those are two conditions. They end up shrinking their funnel from 12 months to 3 months. We speed them up super fast. Does that make sense, Maya?
Yeah, it does. Hi, Barry. I just
Hey.
unmuted myself. So I did something similar, but it wasn't as polished, like nowhere close to what the way you presented. And I think that's my problem, is that I don't present it in that way. It's more of, I've even said, I currently have a client who I've helped. It's taken her a year to get her house ready. And it's true. I have someone who had a ton of clutter, and we finally now, getting to stages of listing, but it took a year for it. So I think it's just my communication, and it's not as polished as the way you presented it, right? So I think
Well,
I need to work on that.
yeah, I think so. And what you just said is subtly different than what I said.
Okay. So
What
tell me,
you're,
yeah.
yeah, what you're offering is compelling for someone that is aware that it's a very involved process and they need
Right.
help. This person
Okay.
saying to you, I don't need you right now.
Right.
Telling them, oh, it's a really hard process and it's going to take a year. That's a tough sale. I don't know that I would be
Okay.
able to make that sale.
See? Yeah.
Yeah, but
Right.
agreeing with them that they're not ready and creating a small window to say, this is
Yeah.
the only chance you have when you're not ready. This is the only chance you have to meet with me to ensure that you don't waste money fixing things.
Okay.
So what you
So-
offered depended on the consumer being aware of how valuable you are. What
Okay.
I'm doing is I'm literally acknowledging the fact that they don't see a value in me, and I'm telling them why I'm valuable today, not a year from now.
That's 100% it. And I think that's a lot of my problem, is that I assume people want help, and I just want
They
to
don't.
go give it to them.
Yeah.
And you're right, like this is a big aha for me, that the fact that I have to affirm, like you said, affirm and acknowledge that this is where they're at, and then take steps from there, and not assume that they want my help or they need my help just because I've
Right.
done it for someone else.
Right. And when you
Okay.
affirm them, this is also important. I don't want it to be bad news and you're kind of conciliatory. And this is what most
Right.
say, it's okay that you're not
Right.
ready. Still no, it's, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to hear that you're not ready right
Right.
now.
Yeah.
Because this
Yeah.
is the perfect time. You probably think you need to fix a couple things, right? Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you about my program, right? Like, it's a whole thing.
Right. No, I love the way you spin it versus
Yeah.
like I was totally trying to communicate the same message,
Yeah.
but I messed it up, where it sounded like you said, like they were going to need a year to
Yeah.
get their house ready, which to them probably sounds very overwhelming. So
Right.
at this point now, I don't know where to go from here. I guess I was going to drop off some information, maybe. Sometimes I do a package, like a pre-list package, where I send my listing information about me and all this, or do I just continue calling them?
Well, are these people you've already spoken to?
I spoke to them, yeah.
Yeah. So
I
what I
spoke
would
to
do
him. We had a
is,
nice conversation. He explained that, it's a lot of it is he has a lot of work to be done around the house. He's elderly, and now he's starting to become too much of a burden. So it sounds like I think he is ready from that perspective, the fact that it's
Yeah.
a lot of work for him.
Yeah.
But he's not probably ready to let go of the house yet. And the
Sure.
fact that there's a lot of clutter.
What I would do is whenever I've got somebody where like you talk to them and you didn't quite use the angle that you wanted to on the first call,
Right.
and now you got to
Yeah.
call them again. It's like, oh gosh, what do I do? What I
Yeah.
always like to do is I would say something like, hey, John, I just started a new program and I thought of you. What
Mhm.
we do for people that aren't ready to sell is we stop
Okay.
by and we reduce the list. You probably think you need to fix 30 or 40 things. And the likelihood is I'm going to help you to where you're not fixing stuff that's going to waste time. So this is a completely free program. It's just a 20-minute walkthrough where I make a list of things that I think you should work on before you sell the home. The goal is for you to not work on as much as you thought. Now,
Right.
I have to do these appointments
Okay.
Wednesday afternoons or Saturday mornings, what works
Okay.
best for you. So it's a new
Because
program.
Yeah, at one point he did say that, he goes, I think we should just sell it for the land value, like the house itself is not, and I said, well, I can do a walkthrough and see, can maximize, you'd be surprised, some of the little things that we can do that will, make a big difference and you want to maximize your value for your home. But
Yeah.
so I don't know.
That client in particular, as I'm thinking about it, he sounds
Yeah.
really nervous and it's probably a
Right.
big change. So
Yeah.
one thing based on those conversations you might want to subtly tweak about what I said is, just celebrate that he's not ready. And I want to give you a free plan. That's
Right.
someone that's
Okay.
nervous and elderly. They
Yeah.
might enjoy the free plan
Okay.
and still talk about the repairs, but
Yeah.
basically like a roadmap that he can work towards over
Okay.
time. I think that would probably be a good idea. So,
Okay. That sounds good.
and then
Thank you.
one more thing. Yeah, absolutely. And then we do need to jump because we're a little bit over time. What if they respond to the text and say, I'm not interested in a call, just want to know my home value? What I would do is I would say, absolutely, give them what they want, but don't give them a really good what they want. What I mean by that is if their home is worth 500,000 roughly, you say, look, I have two questions about your home, and I could probably narrow this down a little bit more, but I'm guessing based on a rough estimation, it's going to be worth somewhere between 425 and 600, and it's worth 500, right?
Right.
You're giving like a really large range. Say, do you have 5 minutes to chat? I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about the home. 5 minutes to chat, couple of questions about the home. They're going to begrudgingly, some of them, you gave them what they wanted. You didn't say no. It's just, let's be honest, that kind of range is not that valuable. And so you're giving them what they want, but then you're saying, I need to refine it. Do you have 5 minutes? I had two quick questions. Then just pick a couple of questions. Have you done any upgrades? Has the kitchen been altered at all? What's the, any updates to the property that I should know? Could you have texted that? Yes. But the value of getting them on the phone to surface their motivation, their long-term goals, being able to say to them on the phone, if the price was right, would you be open to receiving an offer in the next 6 to 12 months? That's my question. If I got that person on the phone by saying two things I want to talk about, when they called me, I would say to them, if the price was right, would you be open to receiving an offer in the next 6 to 12 months? If they say no to that, they're not a seller. I'm going to pat them on their head, send them a seller nurture email every once in a while and not worry about it. But a lot of people would say yes. And that changes the optics of the conversation. So I hope that helps. Thanks for highlighting that, Victor. I appreciate it, buddy. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll be on next Friday, same time. And just keep rolling out these concepts. I guarantee you, if you master what I'm teaching you, you will sell more real estate. So have a great weekend. Thanks, guys.